My uncle's hand closed around my throat before I could even process he was moving. 1 second I was by the pool, the smell of chlorine and barbecue smoke thick in the July air, reaching for a cold drink. The next, his fingers were digging into my windpipe and the world was tilting, the bright sun turning into a halo of black spots. I clawed at his hand, my nails scraping his skin, but his grip was like iron. I couldn't breathe. The summer heat pressed down, 100 degrees of thick humid air that made thinking slow. Music from a Bluetooth speaker cut off mid-song. 20 relatives froze. Forks halfway to their mouths, plastic cups suspended in midair. "You stole from me," Uncle Robert hissed, his face inches from mine, red and sweating, veins bulging in his forehead. $20,000, you worthless piece of trash. My lungs screamed for air. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a wet, choking sound. Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do with no one to back you up? I have, and at that moment nobody moved. My mother looked away, actually turned her head to examine a rose bush like it was the most interesting thing she'd ever seen. My father just studied his shoes. My sister, Megan, covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with shock, but she didn't move either. 20 people, my entire family, 20 witnesses to my assault. And nobody did a single thing. His fingers tightened, digging deeper into the soft flesh of my neck. I felt my vision start to tunnel, the edges turning dark and fuzzy. He was going to kill me right here on the freshly cut lawn of his perfect suburban home, and they were all just going to watch. Then a voice cut through the silence. Authoritative. Female. "Sir, you need to release her now." Robert's fingers loosened just slightly, enough for me to suck in a ragged, burning breath that felt like I'd swallowed glass. "This is a private family matter," he grunted, not even turning around, his eyes still locked on mine, full of a hatred that was terrifyingly pure. "This is a felony assault and it concerns me," the voice replied, closer now. "Step away from her." I recognized that voice. Officer Michelle Evans, my probation officer. Robert's fingers finally released. I collapsed against the pool deck, gasping, coughing, the taste of copper flooding my mouth. I'd bitten my tongue. Evans stood 10 feet away, her hand resting on her duty belt. She was in civilian clothes, jeans and a plain t-shirt, but her presence radiated an authority that silenced the entire party. I'd forgotten she mentioned a surprise check-in, making sure I was attending family events, staying social, reintegrating into the society that had spit me out. She took control of the situation instantly. She assaulted me, and this criminal stole an heirloom necklace worth $20,000 from my wife, Robert declared, stepping back, straightening his expensive polo shirt, trying to regain his composure. "This isn't a family matter anymore," Evans said, her voice cold as ice. "You just assaulted my parole in front of me. This is now a public record." Uncle Robert, trying to wrestle back control, pointed a trembling finger at me. "She has a record," he said to Officer Evans, his voice filled with self-righteous certainty. "A felony conviction. Prescription fraud. What more proof do you need?" He laid out his case like a prosecutor, weaponizing my past against me. He was right about the conviction. 2 years ago, a drunk driver ran a red light and slammed into my car. The accident left me with 3 herniated discs and a pain that felt like a hot poker was permanently lodged in my spine. I got a prescription for painkillers, but when the refills ran out and the pain didn't, I did something stupid. I panicked. I changed a number on the script just once. I got caught. My public defender advised me to take a plea deal. 18 months of probation instead of 3 years in prison. So I took it. I came home to a family that looked at me like I was a disease they might catch. That single mistake became my entire identity. It's like a permanent scar. No matter how much I heal, no matter how much I change, it's the only thing they see when they look at me. They don't see Kayla, the girl who loves animals and wanted to be a vet tech. They see a felon, a criminal, a liability. The scar tissue covers up everything else and they use it to justify their cruelty because in their minds I deserve it. Robert, emboldened by my family's complicit silence, escalated his attack. He wasn't just accusing me of a crime, he was trying to erase my entire character. "He's always been like this," he announced to Evans, his voice booming across the silent yard. "A thief even as a kid. Do you remember when you were 12, Kayla?" He turned to me, a cruel smirk on his face. "You took $50 from my wallet." My stomach clenched. I did take it. But I'd returned it the very next day, racked with guilt. I told him I'd found it under his car seat, too ashamed to admit what I'd done. He'd never believed me. And now, 16 years later, he was twisting that childhood mistake into proof of a lifelong criminal pattern. He was painting a portrait of me as a monster, and my family, the people who were supposed to love me, were nodding along, their faces a mixture of disappointment and disgust. They had already convicted me. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father shook his head slowly, a familiar gesture of profound disappointment. My cousin Ryan, Robert's golden boy son, stood by the grill, a burger flipper in his hand, watching me with cold, detached judgment. They weren't my family anymore. They were the jury, and my uncle was delivering the closing argument of a trial that had been decided long before it ever began. He's a parasite, Evans. Robert spat. She's been nothing but a drain on this family since the day she got out. It's time she faced real consequences. Officer Evans didn't react to Robert's tirade. Her face was a professional mask, neutral and unreadable. She walked over to me, ignoring my uncle completely, and knelt down. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice low and steady. I touched my throat, the skin already tender and starting to bruise. "Think so?" I rasped. She nodded once. "Stay right here." She stood up and faced my family. Her entire demeanor had shifted. She wasn't just a probation officer doing a check-in anymore. She was law enforcement at the scene of a crime. "Mr. Foster," she said, addressing my father. "I need you and your wife to go inside the house. Everyone else, please stay where you are. The party is over." Her voice carried an authority no one dared to question. My parents, looking pale and shaken, scurried inside without a word. Evans turned back to a stunned Robert. "A felony accusation of this magnitude, combined with a witnessed assault, requires a formal investigation," she stated calmly. "I am calling it in." Robert's face paled. "No, wait, we can handle this in the family." "It's too late for that," Evans said, pulling out her phone. "You made this a criminal matter the second you put your hands on her." The backyard was silent except for the clicking of her fingers on the screen. The confidence and arrogance that had radiated from my uncle only moments before had evaporated, replaced by a dawning look of panic. He had made a terrible miscalculation. He thought he was shaming a helpless ex-con. He didn't realize he was performing for an officer of the court. Within 15 minutes, another car pulled up. A man in a simple suit stepped out. He was tall, mid-40s, with a sharp, tired look in his eyes that suggested he'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. "This is Detective Jason Miller," Evans said. "He specializes in financial crimes." Detective Miller's arrival instantly changed the atmosphere. This was no longer a messy family dispute. It was a formal crime scene. Miller's gaze swept across the yard, assessing each family member, lingering for a moment on my cousin Ryan, who suddenly seemed very interested in scraping the grill. Miller listened intently as Evans briefed him, his eyes flicking over to the new, ugly bruises forming on my neck. He approached Robert, his expression unreadable. "Sir, I understand you're the one making the accusation?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "Yes," Robert stammered, his bravado gone. "She stole a $20,000 necklace." "And you are?" Miller asked, turning to me. "I'm Kayla," I said, my voice hoarse. "He's my uncle." Detective Miller nodded slowly. "Kayla, we're going to figure this out." He turned back to the silent crowd. "I'm going to need to speak with everyone individually. No one leaves." He looked directly at Robert. "We'll start with you." And just like that, the trap my uncle had set for me snapped shut, but it was his own leg, not mine, that was caught in its teeth. Detective Miller started his interviews at a patio table, turning the festive 4th of July setting into a makeshift interrogation room. He spoke with my aunt, my parents, and then my uncle, his voice never rising above a calm, professional tone. Then he called for my cousin Ryan. I watched from a distance as Ryan sat down, his body language screaming discomfort. He couldn't sit still, fidgeting with a napkin, his answers short and defensive. His girlfriend, Jessica, watched him from across the yard, her face pale, biting her nails. Miller's sharp eyes missed none of it. After a few minutes, he dismissed Ryan and walked over to Officer Evans, who was standing with me. "Something's not right," Miller said quietly. "The whole family is too eager to believe she's guilty." He glanced at me. "It's a classic case of confirmation bias. It's an easy answer that fits their prejudice. They see her record, and it's easier to accept a simple lie that she's the thief than to confront a more complicated truth that might shatter their worldview. A truth that might implicate someone they see as one of their own, like the golden boy over there." He nodded discreetly toward Ryan. "Makes perfect sense. They've already decided who I am. Anything I do or anything they think I do just confirms what they already believe. It's a trap, and for the last 2 years I've been the only one caught in it." Evans was listening intently, her gaze fixed on Ryan and Jessica. As Jessica nervously ran a hand through her hair, Evans's eyes narrowed slightly. I saw a flicker of recognition in her face. "Wait a minute," she said softly, almost to herself. "I know her." Miller looked at her, confused. "What?" Jessica, she said, her eyes still locked on the nervous girl. Jessica Parker. I helped her get a minor shoplifting charge expunged about a year ago. She was a good kid who made one stupid mistake. She was terrified of having a record of it ruining her life. Evans looked from Jessica back to me and then to Miller, and a grim understanding dawned on her face. Jessica knows exactly what it's like to get a second chance, she said, a new tone of confidence in her voice. And she knows what it's like to almost lose everything over one bad decision. Miller's expression sharpened, the pieces clicking into place for him too. He stared at Jessica, who was now desperately trying to calm a visibly agitated Ryan. That gives us leverage, Miller said, a small, grim smile touching his lips. It was the criminal twist we needed. The key to unlocking the entire case wasn't with the accuser or the accused. It was with the terrified girlfriend of the real thief, a young woman who, thanks to my probation officer, understood the value of a clean slate better than anyone else in that backyard. And Officer Evans, the very person my uncle thought would condemn me, was now the one holding that key. The power had officially shifted, and the facade my family had built was about to come crashing down. Detective Miller brought everyone back together in the center of the yard. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the faces of my family. All right, he said, his voice carrying over the nervous silence. Let's establish a clear timeline. Mr. Robert, you filed a police report saying the necklace went missing sometime in the last 2 weeks, correct? Yes, Robert said, his confidence returning, sensing a final victory. It had to be in the last 2 weeks. My wife, Kimberly, wore it to a charity dinner on the 21st of June. We noticed it was gone from her jewelry box this past Tuesday. He was so sure of himself, so blinded by his hatred for me, that he didn't see the hole he was digging. He looked right at me, a triumphant sneer on his face. She had access. She was here for dinner last week. She's the only one with a record. It had to be her. He sealed his own fate with those words. Miller turned to me. Kayla, can you account for your whereabouts 2 weeks ago? I took a slow, steadying breath. The burning in my throat had subsided, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. Yes, I can, I said, my voice clear and strong. In fact, I have an unbreakable alibi. 2 weeks ago I was in a county holding cell. A stunned silence fell over the yard. My uncle's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of sheer disbelief. I missed a mandatory check-in with Officer Evans because my car broke down on the highway. It was a technical probation violation. I spent 3 days in lockup. I looked directly at Robert, my voice dropping. And you know this for a fact, Uncle Robert. Because you were the one who bailed me out. The color drained from his face. He looked like he'd been punched. That's not possible, he stammered. Officer Evans stepped forward, holding her official department phone. I can confirm, she said, her voice ringing with authority. I personally transported Kayla to the county facility on June 24th. Her bail was posted on June 27th by her uncle, Robert Foster. It's all in the official logs. She turned the screen to show Miller, the digital record glowing in the twilight. Every eye in the yard swung from Robert to Ryan. My cousin looked like a cornered animal. Jessica, seeing the walls closing in, burst into tears. He made me do it, she sobbed. He has a gambling problem. He lost thousands online. He said everyone would blame Kayla anyway because of her record. He said nobody would ever question it. That was it. The confession. Ryan didn't even try to deny it. He bolted, sprinting for the side gate. But Miller was faster. He tackled Ryan before he could make it to the street, cuffing him on the lawn next to the wilting rose bushes. As one officer secured my cousin, Miller walked calmly back to my uncle, who stood frozen, his face a mask of horrified realization. Mr. Foster, Miller said, his voice devoid of any emotion. You're under arrest for felony assault. 6 months later, the fallout was complete. Justice, when it finally arrived, was swift and absolute. Ryan, faced with overwhelming evidence, pleaded guilty to grand theft and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. His golden boy image was shattered forever. My Uncle Robert's trial was a public humiliation. The videos my relatives had taken on their phones were played for the jury, his hands around my throat for everyone to see. He was found guilty of felony assault and sentenced to 2 years. His reputation was destroyed, his businesses were sold off to cover legal fees and debts, and Aunt Kimberly filed for divorce, taking the children and moving 3 states away. The court ordered Robert to pay me damages, A sum that felt like a number from a different reality. I used the settlement money to build a new life, a life that was entirely my own. I got a small, clean apartment in a quiet neighborhood, bought a reliable car that didn't threaten to die every time I hit a stoplight, and I enrolled in a veterinary technology program at the local community college. The ankle monitor was gone. The constant feeling of being watched, judged, and one mistake away from being sent back to a cage was finally gone. For the first time since the accident, I felt truly free. The emotional peace was slower to arrive, but it came. My sister Megan reached out, her apology filled with a shame I could tell was genuine. We agreed to talk soon, a first small step toward rebuilding something from the wreckage. My parents sent letters, dozens of them, filled with apologies and excuses. They sat in a box under my bed, unopened. I wasn't ready for their brand of sorry, the kind that came only after I was proven innocent by someone else. True freedom, I was learning, wasn't just about vindication. It was about choosing who deserved a place in my new life. My boss, Brian, who'd given me a job at the vet clinic when no one else would, offered me a promotion. I was healing not just from the bruises on my neck, but from the deeper wounds my family had inflicted. I finally understood that their judgment was a prison I had allowed myself to live in for far too long. The bars weren't made of steel but of their expectations in my past. And now I had the key. My future was bright, not because a court had declared me innocent, but because I had finally given myself permission to believe it.